So you might have seen that YouTube has begun to roll out AI for age verification as of this week. And this is part of a worrying trend of increasing authoritarianism online, specifically around identifying and linking people's online identities to their IRL identities. And the ID verification trend has only begun to get worse in recent weeks, with governments beginning to develop even more ways to tie your real-life identity to your online identity and to have a fully visible view of everything that you do on the internet. So the impetus for this ID verification was the UK's latest law, the Online Safety Act. It was actually passed about 2 years ago, but it's come into force this year. And the idea behind the law is that it's meant to protect children from unsafe material online. And it puts a duty of care onto social media companies to ensure that their users are age appropriate and that they're viewing age appropriate content while they're using their platforms. Except it's like way broader than that. And the Online Safety Act has begun to cover websites that people typically wouldn't think were unsafe for children. Wikipedia, for example, has fallen foul of this simply because it has a significant user base in the UK and it has content that might be deemed unsafe for children. Wikipedia articles. It's not even just Wikipedia that's been included in this. There have been cycling forums, such as the London Fixed Gear Cycling Forum, which is at risk of closure because of this law, simply because it has a significant UK user base and could hypothetically be used to share content that's unsafe. The UK's online safety law has been a bit of a disaster and it's not been received very well amongst the online community. The UK government has been trying for a long time to get access to people's personal information, including their iCloud data. Over the last couple of years, there's been this big back and forth between the UK government and Apple, where the UK government secretly tried to have a backdoor installed into iCloud. Apple was not down with that and have decided to simply block access to the highly encrypted version of iCloud inside the UK. The safety of children has not necessarily been the top focus. And we're starting to see other governments take advantage to push other similarly authoritarian rules. In the EU, there's currently an active debate, one that was put on hold for a couple of years, over the idea of chat control, a technology whereby any message that you would send online would be scanned to make sure that it doesn't contain any material that's dangerous to children. Specifically, this would apply to images. And it already exists in some form today. If you post an image on, say, Instagram, and the image is public, it'll be scanned against a known database of illegal material. And if your image contains illegal material, your account will be blocked. Chat control is not that. Chat control wants to take that technology and apply it to any message in any online communication, including private ones. It's been pushed forward by Denmark specifically, who've been wanting to put this into force for years and have realized that they now have an opportunity because they hold the presidency of the EU Council, which is one of the EU's regulatory bodies. And currently about 15 of the 27 EU countries have openly come out in favor of it, and only about 3 countries have said that they're against this idea of chat control. This is going to be voted on in October, so in a matter of months it could be a reality that any image sent in any private chat is going to be scanned by the EU. And obviously, you can see a bunch of problems already, right? I don't have to explain every single problem with this. But the big one is that it automatically violates the principle of end-to-end encryption, which a lot of people depend on. End-to-end encryption means that your message can only be read by the sender and the receiver. And any kind of scanning technology that is implemented in between there immediately breaks that protocol because it requires that your message be read by someone who isn't the sender or the receiver. And you think this would be obvious. The EU, on the other hand, claims that this regulation would only be implemented if it didn't violate end-to-end encryption. However, mathematics clearly can't obey the laws of the EU, and the most obvious aspect of this is the fact that this law has one specific exemption. The exemption would apply to politicians' mobile devices and to military mobile devices, because politicians and armies never commit crimes, so we don't have to bother checking those ones. The thing is, though, this law, as well as the UK's Online Safety Act, doesn't have any mechanisms built in to actually check that it's improving the safety of children, which is what it claims to do. The EU's chat control laws, the UK's chat control laws, and the UK's ID verification laws are all based around this idea of protecting children without ever necessarily running these laws by children to understand how they respond. I mean, I can give some personal experience on this front at least, because when I was a kid and I was in school, my school tried to ban video game websites, right? There was one we used called Cool Math Games, and they tried to ban that one. And we just found out how proxies worked. And access those websites anyways. Website blocks and website bans like this, if not paired with proper education, simply just lead to kids becoming really good at software development, I guess. The big winners as of late have been VPN companies. VPN use has surged in the UK as these new online safety rules have kicked in. So if you have a NordVPN sponsorship, you're probably doing pretty good as of late. But yeah, they make me think more of book bans more than anything else. There are so many bits of media over the years that have been banned under the guise of protecting children from safety. And actual honest journalism has been banned under the idea of being dangerous to kids. Currently, there are tons of social media platforms that apply quite strict regulation on what can be posted already. And it's led people to use the words like unalive instead of kill. And it's even led to people discussing protests, but calling them music festivals to bypass the censorship. Censorship as an act only really functions to make people more creative. And without pairing it with actual education, especially in the case of kids, there's no clear evidence that it's going to help to achieve what it wishes to achieve. All of this reminds me of the Patriot Act, which was a series of regulations that was brought into force after 9/11 to improve people's safety, and ended up becoming one of the biggest mass surveillance scandals in global history. Technology that is created to protect the kids never is used to just protect the kids. In many of these cases, politicians either deliberately ignore the actual content of their own bills or just blatantly lie about the content of their own bills. The EU commissioner in charge of the chat control bill was interviewed, and it was quite clear that she had some misunderstandings of the law that she was pushing to be passed in the European Parliament. In an interview with a Swedish newspaper, the European Commissioner was asked a few questions about this chat control law when she describes how the technology would work to interpret these messages. He said, "It's about sniffing, checking out, you could say. It's not as if you read the communication. I mean, it's like a police dog being able to smell if there's something there." I genuinely don't know if she just doesn't understand how messaging works. But a message can either be read or not read. There's no middle ground to this stuff. If you've ever seen when the TikTok CEO was asked to testify in front of Congress, it became very, very clear to quite a lot of people that the people passing the laws to regulate this technology lack the understanding of the basics of how this technology works. But I am inclined to not let them off that easy, because these bills have been found to create deliberate exceptions that would exempt the people who are writing the bill from being subject to these laws. Politicians are exempt, but the general public doesn't have that privilege. And journalism, especially in authoritarian restrictive states, is conducted through apps like Signal and Telegram, where people can send images of not necessarily illegal material, but of crimes being committed. So much of wartime reporting in 2025 is done via social media. And without social media, people can't understand what's happening in these war zones. The images can be harrowing, they can definitely be, but they serve an important journalistic purpose, I find. And to try and ban independent and anonymous messaging is to effectively put the kibosh on journalism, and that stopped them from being able to tell their story to the world. And laws like this don't help make kids safer. They hide kids from the reality of the world, and they encroach on the rights of adults as well. It's a real shame, to be honest, that all of this has been happening so quickly. And clearly youth mental health has not been improving in the last few years as we've clamped down on this. The effects of social media on youth mental health are so much wider than just seeing illegal material. The algorithms themselves of these social media platforms are what reinforce the addictive behaviors and what really put kids' health at harm. And to not put pressure on those aspects of social media and those aspects of the internet is to ignore like the elephant in the room. And this doesn't even begin to consider the actual practical risks of data storage. It's not something that you can just trust. Just recently, there was a huge leak of the T app, the social media app, which existed to allow women to upload pictures of people they'd been on dates with who weren't necessarily safe people. As part of the sign-up process, they had to submit images of their ID. Their ID was kept in an unsecured database and was leaked to the general public literally just a couple of weeks ago. It's inevitable that this will continue to happen if we continue to require online websites that don't want to store people's ID to store their ID. It's like a fact of the internet that data gets leaked, that hacks happen, and minimizing the risk of these hacks, I think, should be a priority of the government. The EU chat control is coming. There's going to be a vote in October on it. If you are in the EU, I am sure you can compose like a brief letter and send it to your representative. There's like an automatic tool to create it, and you can see which countries support and which countries don't support this law. As it stands, I believe there are 15 EU countries that are supporting this law, and there are only 3 that have openly come out against it, which are Austria, Netherlands, and Poland. However, it does seem like there's overall broad support for chat control and broad support from looking at your messages, but not at the messages of politicians. Hey yo, thanks for watching. If you feel like you learned something and you want another way to support the channel that's completely free, please consider joining my Patreon. It is linked in the description below. I'm trying to make an effort to create some community outside of YouTube, and if that sounds like it might be up your street, then head on over. Did I mention it's free? Yes, it's free. Yeah, come on, click on it, okay? Love you. Bye-bye.